what's up you guys, the Curious Owl here, and today I will be sharing with you guys my May TBR. So May is a very different month for me. Many of you guys know I have moved now, and currently it is May 9th. So this video is coming out very late, but because last weekend, which was May 1st, that was the weekend I started moving, it was very hard for me to find time to sit and film and take care of stuff. And then I had to set up my new filming and editing and book area. Unfortunately, a lot of the books I wanted to read in April, I couldn't because I was so stressed out with trying to move and stuff that this month, now that we've moved, pretty much everything is taken care of at this point and I'm still working from home. I have so much more drive to go back to reading a bunch of the books that I wanted to read. So without further ado, here's basically an update on what I still have to read from the last couple months and the other books I end up picking out for this month. First things first, I have my March random TBR pick, which is His Majesty's Dragon by Naomi Novik. I also then have my April random TBR book, which is Arch Enemies by Marissa Meyer, the second book in the Renegades trilogy. Next, I have my next Stephen King read. Now, I want to try to read more than one Stephen King book every month, but the last several months since the beginning of the year have not really worked out that well because I've had a lot of things that I wanted to read. But this month I do hope to get through at least one book, which the first one being Dr. Sleep, the sequel to The Shining by Stephen King. I think I was going to try to read this in April because I read The Shining in March and I liked The Shining. I gave it a 3-star and we'll be having a review for that come out sometime. But I'm kind of excited to see what Dr. Sleep goes into because essentially this one follows the child Danny when he's grown up after the events of The Shining, because in that book a lot of stuff happens to him. I think he's more of the main character really than his father is, but they kind of share the main character spot really, but this is his story. Next I have my March library lottery pick, which was The Dirty Streets of Heaven by Tad Williams. I ended up DNFing this in March and tried to read it again in April. I didn't DNF it for any particular reason other than I had just run out of time in March, and then April there was the Owls starting and I kind of had wanted to start off on a clean slate so I had put this one down for the time being. I still actually remember quite a lot from the first 40 some pages of this book. I hadn't really got that far into it, but this one I do want to try to finish actually this month because I really did like where it was going and I think it's got a lot of potential, so I'm excited to get back to this one when I can this month. Then I have my April library lottery pick, which ended up being The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest by Stieg Larsson. Now, this is my physical copy, but when I had gone through my library lottery pick for April, I ended up being that this was the first book that had come up. I actually have the audiobook checked out for it right now because I'm trying to find some audiobooks that might help me get through some of my TBR, so I'm following the audiobook more so, but I'm going to be counting the pages for this as opposed to the minutes because I actually have a physical copy and I'm tracking my progress with the pages of the book as opposed to the audiobook. But I'm currently working through this one at the moment. Next, because I finished Fire and Blood in April, I want to read the last book that I have in terms of anything to do with the Song of Ice and Fire series by George R.R. Martin, and that is A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. This is a compilation of 3 short stories, I believe, following the characters Dunk and Egg, who take place essentially about 90 years before the events of A Song of Ice and Fire. And from what I know, those 2 characters are supposed to be a kind of parallel to the characters Tyrion and Podrick Payne in the Song of Ice and Fire series. So I would really like to get through this one because I want to see what exactly that parallel is and what it might mean for Tyrion in particular when it comes to the rest of the Song of Ice and Fire series, as hopefully the next book comes out sometime this year, for God's sake. Next, to finish off my Dorothy Must Die reading series that I kind of had wanted to finish up with my finishing series, I have Dorothy Must Die Stories Volume 1. So this contains 3 prequel novellas that follow different characters. There's 3 volumes of these. I only have the first one, but I am going to be getting the second and the third one hopefully soon, or I can see if my library has them, if the library ever opens. I don't really know. Each volume essentially contains prequel novellas that dictate things about either a certain character or certain events or things of that nature that I think take place before Amy actually gets to Oz for the first time. So there's one, I believe, that's following Dorothy after she had returned from Kansas back to Oz. There's other smaller characters that have their own prequel novellas as well. So I'm actually really excited to read these because I would love to know more about some of these characters that I didn't feel like I got a lot of in the main series. And then finally, what I would like to read outside of the May random TBR and May library lottery that you guys will see here in a minute. The next book I want to read is the last book in the Morganville Vampires reread series I've been doing for the last year and a couple months at this point, and that is Daylighters. Daylighters is the final book in the series. I remember vividly loving this book when I was first reading it in high school, and it is so surreal that we're actually at this point where the series is now going to be over, it's going to be done, and the end of Fall of Night really made it apparent that I think that these last two books are probably going to be my favorite in the entire series, which is a shock because I really thought Ghost Town was going to be my most favorite out of the series, which was book 9 out of 15, I think. But as indicated by how my reading went in April, Fall of Night right now is the number 1. So let's see if Daylighters ends up beating Fall of Night. And then this next book, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get it. So this is very tentative whether or not I may even be able to read this one. And that's Rage by Stephen King. So I would like to try to read this short story novella of some sort, as it is the next chronological book within Stephen King's writing. After The Shining, he had released Rage, and the only reason I'm reading Dr. Sleep beforehand is because what I want to do is I want to read all books involved in a series he has from when he first wrote it to when the most recent installment of it, so I can see the progression of each of the series as time had gone on. In chronological order, though, the next book he had published was Rage, which was, I believe, about 170 pages. Like, it was about as long as Carrie. But I cannot find it for the life of me. I have checked Amazon, I've checked Barnes & Noble. It is nowhere to be found. And when I had looked on Amazon, people were selling it for like upwards of $1,000. Like, it is ridiculous. So if you guys know of anywhere that I could get Rage or would be willing to send me a copy of it, I would greatly appreciate it because I would really like to read everything that Stephen King has ever come out with. But I think this may be one where it's possible I'm gonna have to skip a book that he's written, because the only other way I can find it is it's basically a part of like a short story collection, but that short story collection is like going for upwards of $1,000, and I cannot afford that, nor would I even want to spend that much money on a short story collection. So I'm hoping, though, that if the library does open here in the next like month or so, which I highly doubt, but if it does, or if it even opens up at all during the time that I'm still going through this reading series, I can go back to this one and pick it up at the library and try to read it if somebody has at least either the short story collection or the story itself when it was published as like its own book. So that's kind of the issue I'm dealing with at the moment. But without further ado, let us roll the footage back at the old apartment for the May random TBR pick and the May library lottery pick. Hey guys, so obviously this is back in time a little bit because I'm still here at this apartment, and I just wanted to do obviously the random TBR and the library lottery picks because by the time you guys see this video, I will have been moved, and I wanted to get my May TBR set up as soon as possible so that I knew which books to leave here and which books to essentially pack up for the move. So we're going to do the random TBR first, as always, so let's see what we get for May. And the winner is The Aeneid. Oh, okay, so this is a classic. This is by Virgil. Now, I read bits and pieces, actually, of this in a class that I took in college that was focusing on different themes about hell, essentially, different ways that cultures across the world had viewed it, and then one of the pieces we read was parts of the Aeneid, because in that class also we had read the entirety of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, and if you've read it or you've heard of it, you may know that Virgil, who is the author of the Aeneid, is like the guy that basically helps Dante traverse through hell, purgatory. So it's very, very cool. I've wanted to read the entirety of the Aeneid since I've read the bits and pieces of it that we read in that class, so I'm actually really excited for that one. So now I'm going to move on to my library lottery. Now, just like I did last month, what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up picking out essentially the realm of where I'm going to be looking for on Overdrive and see what I have that is there. Basically, what I will do is the first person or first book that comes up under that last name that I find, I'm going to pick. And if I have a copy of it myself, I will use that as opposed to checking it out on Overdrive. But if I do not have that book, I will probably pick out the audiobook more than likely if they have it. Otherwise, I will default to the ebook, but audiobook is going to be my preferred choice. So as always, we're going to start first with the age range. Ooh, I thought it was going to land on young adult, but it looks like we have a middle grade. That's going to be interesting. Okay, so now we're going to go with the 4 different genres I could think of that is part of middle grade. Sweet, middle grade fantasy. I'm already digging this month's pick. And now finally, we're going to pick the author last name that we have to pick from. All right, the letter T. So I'm going to go on Overdrive and see what I can find. Okay, so the first book I found within the middle grade fantasy section with the last name of the author starting with the letter T is Museum of Thieves by Leanne Tanner. This is the first book in a series called the Keeper Trilogy, I believe, and this looks really interesting. I don't know anything about it, but I'm assuming that it is about a couple kids that basically get involved with some kind of museum or library, or they kind of traverse through these different areas, and I was able to get the ebook version. I do not believe that there is an audiobook version, so I just decided to go with the ebook, and I'm actually kind of excited. I haven't read a middle grade fantasy in a while, so I'm very excited. Middle grade is like a genre that I think it doesn't get enough rep sometimes on BookTube, and so I love to expand my horizons and especially read these younger stories that I probably would have really loved growing up because I was obsessed with like fantasy my whole life. Like I loved the Harry Potter series. I loved like the Magic Treehouse series that had been super, super big when I was like in elementary, middle school. So I'm excited to see how this one is because I think this is a fairly old series and I've never heard of it before. So we'll see how it goes. So there you guys go. Those are the books I plan on reading in May. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please do give this video a big thumbs up. And if you aren't already and you'd like to be, hit that button down below and subscribe to become an owlet in our flock. And I will see all you guys in my next video. Bye guys.